The Dassault Mirage 2000 is a French multi-role, single-engine, fourth-generation jet fighter manufactured by Dassault Aviation. Its prototype first flew on March 1978, and its first production variant was the Mirage 2000C, which flew on November 1982, replacing the Mirage 3 on the French Air Force from 1983 onwards. Over 600 Mirage 2000 aircraft were built until November 2007, and it has been in service with 10 nations: France, Brazil, Egypt, Greece, India, Peru, Qatar, Taiwan, Ukraine, and United Arab Emirates. The variant simulated on DCS is the initial production model, the Mirage 2000C. Press spacebar to continue. On DCS, the pre-flight checklist is not really needed, as the simulated aircraft will always start with all switches in their correct positions. But on this mission, we will employ this checklist to familiarize ourselves with the Mirage cockpit and its main systems. We will use an Egyptian Mirage 2000 EM, which is an export variant of the 2000C, and our operations theater will be the DCS Sinai map. Press spacebar to begin the training. We will begin the pre-flight check at the left console, then the left wall, left vertical panel, front dash, center column, right vertical panel, right wall, and end with the right console. The Mirage 2000's flight control system is a fly-by-wire design which manages an inherently unstable airframe, intentionally designed with its center of gravity ahead of the center of lift, giving the aircraft a high agility. The fly-by-wire system is needed for a safe, predictable, and carefree handling of this unstable aircraft design, adjusting electronically the flight control surfaces constantly, including the leading-edge flaps that deploy for increased lift during maneuvers. CDVE Channel 5 switch should be off and its guard closed. CDVE stands for fly-by-wire in English. This switch enables the emergency fly-by-wire channel, which gives the pilot direct elevon control. In real life, the CDVE5 automatically engages, in case all fly-by-wire channel redundancy is lost. On this mode, the aircraft is very challenging to fly as it tends to backflip. At low speed it gives a high risk of flip over, while at high speed you risk having a wing failure. Press spacebar to continue. Fly-by-wire and autopilot test switches, off and guard closed. These switches activate the autopilot test, which should be done at each startup after engine start, just before taxing. Confirm they are at off, and press spacebar to continue. Emergency afterburner cutoff switch, off and cover closed. This switch disables the engine afterburner by closing its fuel supply. It should be used when the afterburner remains lit after pulling the throttle from the afterburner zone, or when the engine nozzle is damaged or malfunctioning, to prevent the afterburner from melting it. Emergency oil switch, off, cover closed. Switches the engine lubrication method to the emergency oil system, secondary while, which uses oil from a secondary reservoir. This mode has 20 minutes of autonomy and only lubricates the compressor, while the main lubricating system also lubricates the turbine. Due to this, the engine will accumulate wear when pushed above 88% RPM while in this mode. Switching to the emergency oil system should be done when the main lubricating system is not functioning, generally indicated by the while warning light on the alarm panel. Engine computer, external fuel tank dump switch, cover closed. This switch activates the external tank fuel dump. The Mirage 2000C can only dump the fuel in the external tanks, not the internal ones. This fuel dump is triggered by this switch and cannot be stopped once started. The time needed to dump all the external fuel varies from 2.5 to 4 minutes, depending on the tank's capacity. Radar ground emission switch, off. This switch allows radar emission while the aircraft is still on the ground. Normally ground emissions are disabled to protect the ground crew. Just forward of it is the flight recorder switch, which is non-functional on the sim. Emergency trim should be at N. This switch activates the emergency trim system. Press spacebar to continue. The sound configuration panel adjusts the different aircraft sound levels, set as desired. Rotate the knobs using the mouse wheel or by clicking and dragging up or down with the mouse. Amplifier selector, the Mirage has 2 audio amplifiers. This switch selects which one is active. VOR and ILS volume, sets the volume for the VOR and ILS Morse code. TACAN volume, sets the volume for the TACAN beacon identification Morse code. Missile volume sets the volume of the missile seeker audio. Intercom volume. The intercom is only used in the Mirage 2000 two-seater, it is non-functional on the Mirage 2000C. Ground, marker, and ECM volume. Sets the audio volume of the ground crew communications, marker beacon, and the electronic countermeasures. UHF radio volume sets the volume of the red radio, UHF auxiliary. The radio gets its name from the color of the knob. VHF UHF radio volume sets the volume of the green radio, VHF UHF main. The in-flight restart magnetic switch, off. In case of an engine flameout, an in-flight restart can be attempted. This restart uses the speed of the aircraft to windmill the engine up to ignition speed. We will study the whole in-flight engine restart procedure in detail on a dedicated training mission, when we will push the in-flight restart switch forward, where it is held magnetically for 30 seconds, during which the engine ignition system is energized. Press spacebar to continue. Throttle, ensure it is fully back, on its off position. The throttle travel has two bypassable stops located before the end of travel on each end, an idle stop at the rear, before the end of travel off position, which can be bypassed by using the unlock throttle button, and a military power stop at the front, before the afterburner zone, which can be bypassed by applying more force forward. Move the throttle all the way forward, and then all the way back. This will take the lever out of its default off position. Currently the simulated throttle lever is at the idle position, and if you move your hardware throttle you will note that it can't move back all the way. Click on the Unlock Throttle Off button when your hardware throttle lever is fully back, to have the simulated throttle move to the off position. If your HOTAS hardware has a throttle with distinct hardware steps for the idle and military positions, you can have the simulated throttle match your hardware throttle by setting the detent values, as percentage of throttle travel, on the Special Options screen of DCS, as shown on the figure. You will need to experiment a bit to find the values that make the virtual and the hardware throttles match. Press spacebar to continue. Radar power mode knob should be at off. The Mirage 2000C is equipped with the RDI radar, located in front of the cockpit inside the nose cone. The RDI primary mission is to detect and track air targets at long range in clear sky, as well as in look down against targets flying low. It has a secondary capability to carry out ranging for air-to-ground weapon delivery, as well as low-altitude navigation with ground mapping and terrain avoidance modes. Emergency fuel switch, off. The emergency throttle and switch are used to select the emergency fuel mode, secondary carb, and control the engine fuel flow while in this mode. When the switch is down, it enables this mode, which should be used in the following conditions: loss of efficiency of the throttle, non-recoverable engine RPM drop, constant engine overspeed not recoverable via secondary calc, mechanical failure of the normal driveline, or inability to relight the engine in flight in normal or secondary calc mode. In secondary mode, the throttle and throttle cutoff button are shunted and have no effect on the engine. The engine needs to be controlled using the emergency fuel throttle. This throttle directly controls the fuel flow to the engine by bypassing the fuel regulator and using a simple valve to control the fuel flow. Afterburner is not available in secondary mode and idle RPM is higher than normal. To shut down the engine when in secondary carb mode, the engine startup panel fuel shutoff valve switch must be used to start the engine. Press spacebar to continue. To always provide sufficient airflow to the engine, the Mirage uses 3 aerodynamic devices on the air intakes, which are automatically operated and do not require pilot intervention except during emergencies. Inlet cones, mounted on the fuselage at the start of both intakes, they slow down the intake air to subsonic speed when the aircraft is supersonic. Scoops, present just behind the air inlets, the scoops extend to provide more air to the engine when at high angles of attack. Air inlets, present on the top and bottom of the intakes, those inlets open automatically by negative pressure inside the intake and can't be manually controlled. Scoops switch, set to auto, the R position keep the scoops closed. Inlet cone switch, set to auto, the R position keeps them retracted. This panel also holds the wing leading edge slats control. Slats position switch, set to auto. The automatic slats are actuated in function of the angle of attack. They begin to operate at 4 degrees of AOA and are fully extended at 10 degrees or more. The slats can be manually extended or retracted using this switch, which has 3 positions: extended, auto, which is the default, and retracted. Press spacebar to continue. External light switches, all off. The Mirage 2000C has all the standard navigation, anti-collision, and formation lights, which can be set to bright, dim, or off. Other external lights are the taxi or landing lights, a nighttime identification light, a retractable refueling light, and a refueling probe light. Press spacebar to continue. Wheel brake system, set to 1, cover closed. This switch selects which hydraulic system the wheel brakes will use. If pressure is lost in the primary hydraulic circuit, the change should be automatic. In the default position, forward, the primary hydraulic system will be used, and the SPAD anti-skid system will be enabled. In the rearward position, number 2, the brakes will use the emergency hydraulic system and the SPAD anti-skid system will be disabled. Press spacebar to continue. Tape recorder switch, set to off, A. The flight recorder is not yet simulated. Landing and taxi light switch, set to off, A. The landing lights provide forward illumination during ground operation, takeoff and landing. The 2 headlights are located on the front wheel strut, and are automatically turned off when the gear is not locked in the down position. Its switch has 3 positions, A4 off, the landing lights are turned off. ROWL for taxi, the landing lights are turned on and lit up a wide area in front of the aircraft. ATT for landing, on this position the landing lights lit up an area about 14 degrees below the aircraft waterline, to illuminate the runway when landing. Press spacebar to continue. Police light, A, off. The police light allows nighttime aircraft identification by illumination during air policing duties. Located on the left side of the aircraft, behind the air intake, is a high-intensity floodlight oriented up and to the left. For the police light to turn on, the navigation and weapon system, SNA, needs to be in police mode, and the landing light switch set to its off position. Press spacebar to continue. VHF-UHF radio operation mode, turn to its off position. UHF radio operation mode, turn to its off position. Press spacebar to continue. In-flight refueling switch, set to off. The upper position, RVTN, turns on the retractable refueling light and the refueling probe light. Brake chute lever, forward. The Mirage is fitted with an emergency drag chute that can be used to reduce the landing distance or during aborted takeoff. The parachute container is located on the underside of the aircraft, between the exhaust nozzle and the centerline pylon. If desired, the drag chute container can be replaced by the Eclair pod, which is an add-on countermeasure dispenser. The drag chute command lever is located on the left cockpit wall at the base of the windshield. When pulled full aft, the drag chute deploys. When pushed back forward, the drag chute is separated from the aircraft. The drag chute must not be deployed until the nose gear is on the ground, in order to avoid damage to the engine nozzle. Canopy fracture lever, rearward. On the real aircraft, the canopy fracture lever activates the built-in canopy fracture detonation cords, to be used to exit a crashed aircraft with a stuck canopy. However, on DCS it works as a canopy jettison lever instead, where the whole canopy is removed from the aircraft. Do not move the lever fully forward, as this canopy jettison works even on a cold aircraft. Press spacebar to continue. Gear handle, down. Raises and lower the landing gear, also serves as landing gear warning light and blinks red whenever the gear is being lowered or raised, and when the landing gear is up and then speed drops below 230 knots. Emergency gear handle, normal, pushed forward. Lowers the landing gear using the secondary hydraulic system in case of primary system failure. Do not pull the handle, as it is not possible to return the handle to its forward position. Press spacebar to continue. The Mirage 2000C is equipped with 2 DEFA 554 30mm cannons, each with 125 rounds, located on the underside of the airframe between the engine air intakes. Gun safety switch, safe, cover closed. To fire the guns, both the master arm switches and this gun safety switch need to be in the armed position. Press spacebar to continue. Fly-by-wire mode switch, set as needed by the mission. This switch is used by the pilot to adapt the fly-by-wire system to the stores loaded into the aircraft. Two modes are available, AA for air-to-air, and charges for air-to-ground loads. Emergency fly-by-wire gain switch, norm, cover closed. Placing this switch in the emergency position will isolate the fly-by-wire computer from the air data computer. This means that the fly-by-wire system will no longer have speed, altitude, attitude, angle of attack, and slip data into its calculations. This mode is primarily used when some component of the air data computer is damaged and normal fly-by-wire operation are resulting in unstable flight. Switching to this mode is irreversible and should only be done in case of emergency, as the aircraft's stability is then dependent on the pilot. Press spacebar to continue. On the Weapon Control Panel, PCA. Selective Jettison Switch, off, cover closed. Sets the Weapons and Navigation System, SNA, into Selective Jettison mode. Master Arm Switch, off. This switch allows weapon release. When set to on, it automatically sets on the flight stick the trigger safety covers. Press spacebar to continue. Backup Attitude Indicator, caged. The backup ADI provides pitch and roll information when the main ADI is inoperative. It is a self-contained system with its own gyros, and is powered by the emergency attitude and heading switch located on the right console. On DCS, it starts on a caged state. To uncage, click and hold the mouse cursor over its adjustment knob and then use the mouse wheel to move the aircraft symbol up and down. To cage, simply move the aircraft symbol all the way up. Press spacebar to continue. Spin switch, norm. Placing this switch in the vril position gives full yaw and roll authority to the pilot. This is used to allow the pilot to recover from a flat spin. Using this mode while in normal flight can lead to stalls, spins, and even structural damage at high speed, as yaw stability is no longer guaranteed by the fly-by-wire system. Press spacebar to continue. Main Attitude Indicator Pull Switch, set to N. The Main Attitude Indicator, ADI, provides aircraft attitude, heading, marker overfly indication, as well as ILS localizer and glide slope deviation. The instrument gets its attitude and heading from the inertial navigation system. The pole switch locks the instrument in the south pole position to prevent the display of incorrect information to the pilot in case of malfunction of the instrument or the INS. Press spacebar to continue. VTB Power Switch, off, A. The VTB is the radar display, and this is its power switch. The VTB will turn on after a 30-second delay, during which the system will heat up to operating temperature. VTH Power Switch, off, A. The VTH is the heads-up display. This switch turns it on. The VTH will turn on after a 30-second warm-up delay. The test position is not implemented. Press spacebar to continue. Radar Altimeter Switch, off, A. Turns on and start the self-test of the radar altimeter. Be aware that the radar altimeter has a limit of 5,000 feet above ground level. Asterisks will be displayed on the HUD when the aircraft AGL altitude is above 5,000 feet. Asterisks will also be displayed whenever the aircraft roll angle is higher than 20 degrees, since at that angle the radar altimeter beam cannot give a reliable measure. Press spacebar to continue. Fuse switch, set to inert. On the Weapon Preparation Panel, PPA, this switch selects which fuse to use for the selected bombs. Instantaneous, RET, retarded. And inert. On inert, no fuse is armed and the bombs won't explode. Press spacebar to continue. Feeder tanks intercom control, closed, vertical. This switch allows for fuel to transfer between the left and right feeder tanks, to balance the weight in case of transfer failure. Not functional on DCS. Press spacebar to continue. Battery rearm switch, set to off, A. This switch turns on or rearms the 24-volt, 40-amp-hour rechargeable battery. Transformer rectifier switch, on, M. The Mirage has two 150 amperes 28 volts transformer rectifier, one for normal use, the other intended for emergencies. This switch enables the main converter, up, or the emergency converter, down. Alternator 1 switch, on, M. Enables the first alternator to power the AC1 main bus. Alternator 2 switch, on, M. Enables the second alternator to power the AC2 main bus. Press QRA switch, off, down. QRA stands for Quick Reaction Alert. The QRA switch keeps parts of the aircraft powered up, so the aircraft remains in an almost ready state on the ramp. The standard QRA procedure on the real aircraft is to employ ground electric power to do a normal INS alignment up to Class 4, then the plane is put in standby with the QRA switch. The aircraft is then kept powered by the ground unit for the duration of the QRA mission. If the plane needs to scramble, the pilot hops in the cockpit, switch the QRA switch off, start the rest of the systems and let the INS continue with the remaining of the alignment, and then is ready for takeoff. On DCS this feature is not yet fully implemented. Press spacebar to continue. Canopy lever, open, middle position. When starting with a cold aircraft, the canopy will be open and locked. Press spacebar to continue. Electric pump switch, off. Each of the two hydraulic circuits has a mechanical hydraulic pump to maintain hydraulic pressure when the engine is operating, but additionally, this switch powers a backup electrical pump connected to System 2, and which automatically starts when the pressure in System 2 falls below 160 bars. Warning sound switch, off. This switch enables the audio warnings. Pitot heat switch, off, cover open. Enables the pitot heat system to be used when the flight will occur during icing conditions. Press spacebar to continue. IFF interrogation mode selector, set to off. Identification friend or foe, IFF, is an identification system that allows military aircraft to identify other aircraft as friendly using their radar. In DCS, the IFF simulation is limited, only the radar IFF interrogation mode selector is simulated. Press spacebar to continue. The Mirage 2000C Electronic Warfare Suite, EW, is highly integrated. All the systems communicate with each other to increase survivability and situational awareness. The Mirage's EW systems are Serval, radar warning receiver, spiral, chaff and flare dispenser, Sabre, defensive jammer, Eclair pod, provides an additional chaff and flare dispenser, and D2M, which is a missile launch warning system. These systems are configured by a single panel, the countermeasure panel, located on the right console. The electronic, infrared and radar countermeasures employment is done via commands on the HOTAS or automatically by the aircraft. Press spacebar to continue. Jammer operation mode switch, set to VEI. The Sabre radar jammer has 3 modes of operation, selectable with this switch. VEI, on this position the jammer is in standby and performs background intelligence gathering. Square, here the jammer will jam radar emitters that are locking the aircraft, using reduced power to allow our own radar operation. PCM, the jammer will jam radar emitters that are locking the aircraft at full power, automatically switching our radar off. Countermeasure power and test switches, set all to off, A. Each of the following switches has 3 positions, A for off, ARIT, M for on, marque, and T for test. Jammer power and test switch, BR for Breuiller, set to off, A. This switch powers the Sabre radar jammer. RWR power and test switch, check it's off, A. This switch powers the Serval radar warning receiver. D2M power and test switch, off, A. This switch powers the D2M radar missile launcher detector. When enabled it will emit a sound alert, a 3 kHz sound for half a second, repeating after a half-second lapse, 4-5 seconds. Press spacebar to continue. The right side of the panel controls the countermeasures dispenser. Decoy dispenser operation mode switch, A. This switch has 3 positions, A for ARIT or off. On this position the decoy dispenser system is not powered. SA for semi-automatic, here the decoy dispenser system is powered. The release of the program selected on the decoy dispenser program selector is done manually by the pilot. AU for automatic, the decoy dispenser system is powered and the release of the program, selected on the decoy dispenser program selector, is done automatically when a radar emitter enters the high threat zone. The system will also release the IRSAM countermeasure program when the D2M system detects a missile launch. Decoy dispenser program selector, set to automatic, A. The countermeasures are released following a set program. A program is organized in cycles, each releasing a number of individual countermeasure packs released at a set interval. This knob selects between automatic and programs 1 to 10, as shown on the table. Press spacebar to continue. In addition to the inertial navigation system, the Mirage 2000C is also equipped with VOR, TACAN, and ILS radio navigation systems. VOR and ILS power switch, set to off, A. The VOR, Very High Frequency Omnidirectional Range System, is a civil radio navigation beacon that provides direction to a VOR ground station, and distance if the ground station is equipped with a DME, distance measuring equipment. In the Mirage 2000C, the VOR equipment only supports bearing indication, not distance. The VOR operating frequencies are from 108.0 MHz to 117.95 MHz. Please note that this switch also controls the ILS power. TACAN mode switch, set to off. The Tactical Air Navigation is a military radio navigation system, similar to the VOR DME but with operating frequency stored in preset channels. TACAN stations can be found on airbases, ships, and big aircraft like tankers. Press spacebar to continue. Emergency attitude and heading switch, confirm it is off, A. This switch activates the emergency attitude and heading operational mode. Press spacebar to continue. The PSM panel controls both the PCN and the INS operational modes. PSM mode selector knob, confirm it's at off, AR. On this position both the INS and the PCN are turned off. PSM operational mode selector knob, set to N. On DCS this knob is initially set to its CRV position, which is a maintenance function. Move it to its N position, which is the normal operating mode for INS data entry and visualization. The engine startup panel controls the feeder and starter fuel pumps, as well as the Mirage's jet fuel starter, JFS. Starter fuel pump switch should be off, to the left. This pump supplies fuel to the engine during its start sequence, when only DC power is available from the battery. It is automatically pushed to its on position, to the right, by the starter button cover when it is opened. Starter button cover, closed. Pushing the starter button initiates the JFS engine starter. The cover is spring-loaded and will automatically close a few seconds after being opened. Ignition and ventilation switch, set to either its left, G, or right, D, position. The engine has two separate ignition coils and the pilot employs this switch to alternate between them during successive startups, to even out their wear. Press spacebar to continue. Boost fuel pump switches, off, to the left. On the Mirage 2000C, fuel is supplied to the engine by two low-pressure electrical pumps connected to both left and right feeder tanks. These pumps require AC electric power and thus they work only when the jet engine is running. Fuel shutoff valve switch, closed, to the left and cover open. This valve completely shuts off the engine's fuel supply. Press spacebar to continue. Good, we have completed this cockpit familiarization training, covering most of the cockpit controls of the Mirage 2000C. On future training missions we will cover in more detail the navigation, radar, and weapons systems of the aircraft, while on the next mission we will cover the basic cold start of the Mirage. See you there. Press spacebar to end this training.